Hi, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to hold a German bow. As I'm having new students come to me from time to time and going and watching other kids play and watching school groups play, I found that the German bow hold is one of the most commonly misunderstood skills that students come to with me. So I want to talk just a little bit today about how to hold the German bow. I'm just going to play a D major scale and have a look at the bow hold as I go through it, and then we'll cut to some other things about more specifically how to put the bow hold together. So here's just a D scale. Okay, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and put the bass down, and I'll be right back to be a little bit more specific about how to put the bow hold together. Okay, so in terms of building the German bow hold, the place where I start is I always start away from the instrument. I'll have students put the instrument down and just stand comfortably somewhere where it's not in the way. And the first thing I'll talk about is just getting the right arm to relax. I'll talk about the right arm, thinking of it as a piece of overcooked spaghetti, just completely relaxed. And there's a couple of things that kids will frequently do that I always want to watch out for. Locking in their elbow, you don't want to over straighten the arm. I'll talk a lot about a relaxed elbow or a soft elbow. You never want them bending this elbow up. That causes all kinds of problems. So always a relaxed or soft elbow, not straight, because straight ends up locking out. And I'll always have them pay attention to the curve of their fingers when their fingers are nice and relaxed. When anyone has a relaxed arm, you never see their fingers straighten out like this. They always curve. Most people, their fingers will curve so that their fingernail is roughly parallel to the floor, but it varies from person to person. Mine go about 45 degrees, and that's fine. Whatever it is whatever it is, but you want nice and relaxed. Now, the easy thing about the German bow hold is that you take that nice relaxed hand, you take the frog, you stick it right in there, curve the fingertips underneath, and there you go. There's the German bow hold. Now that looks nice and easy, but there's more detail to it than that, and kids are always screwing this up. So I think we'll zoom in a little bit here in a second and go into a little bit more detail about this. Things that could typically go wrong and that you have to really make sure of on the German bow hold. Okay, so you can see up in here closer, the thing that I'd like to point out before anything else is that everything is curved. And that's, I think, a key piece to any bow grip. But the things that end up straightening out on the German bow, main problems you see this, where the index finger straightens out like this, the thumb straightens out like that. This one is a really serious problem that you see from people all the time. They press in like this and this knuckle bends backwards. So you want to make sure that everything is really curved. I want to go over just briefly, while you can see it really well, what the position and function of each finger is. So if you start with your relaxed hand, the adjusting screw here comes over here right into the webbing between the thumb and the index finger. Sits right there. So you want to keep everything nice and relaxed. When elbows start to creep up, wrists start to straighten out and fingers start to straighten out. So the relaxed elbow is really key to keeping things from straightening out. As the elbow comes up, fingers straighten out. So the relaxed elbow helps keep everything curved. Adjusting screw goes in the webbing between the thumb and the index finger. The index finger and the middle finger come together. So first and second fingers sit right here underneath the stick, and they are the main supports for the tip of the bow. The thing that you always see German bow bass players doing is they drop that tip and they have this angled thing going right here. That gets fixed by making sure you have a good curve on the index finger to come up underneath and support the tip of the bow. So when I see tips dropping with my students, I'll say support the tip, and they know to bring the index and the second finger in like that, up onto the fingertips, and that'll keep the bow parallel to the floor and keep the tip from dropping. The pinky finger comes around here and just touches lightly on the ferrule. The function of the pinky finger is to control the tilt of the bow. If you try to play with just the thumb and these two fingers, you certainly can, but you're going to find that the bow is very unstable. It always tilts around. The pinky finger comes up, touches lightly on the ferrule. That controls your degree of tilt. The third finger mostly does nothing. sits there relaxed. Depends on the size of your frog and the size of your hand what you'll do with your third finger. When I'm playing and I go to put some weight into the bow, my third finger will frequently come over here and touch the side of the ferrule and kind of work together with my pinky. A lot of times it just sits there in the air, relaxed, doing nothing. The key to it is that it's relaxed, and it depends on the size of your frog. German bow frogs are extremely inconsistent. There is no standard size to a German bow frog. Some are pretty small, some are huge. So you really never know what that third finger is going to do until you have your hand on the frog and see the size of the hand of the player. The thing you never want to see is this. This big frog here is not for you to wrap your fingers up inside of it. This is a huge problem. Index and second finger support underneath. Thumb comes on top of the stick right here. Pinky touches the ferrule right underneath. Third finger just stays relaxed. Sometimes it can join the pinky on the ferrule depending on the size of the frog and the size of the player's hand. This is critical. Any kind of fast playing or spiccato is dependent on this flexibility. And it's true with any kind of bow hold. For any bowed instrument, you know you have to have flexible fingers. This is the flexibility in the German bow hold. When this happens, you lose your flexibility. When this happens, you lose your flexibility. When this happens, you lose the flexibility. And this is what's so important about keeping everything curved, is you get this so that when it's time for fast or smooth playing, that flexibility is going to give you what you need. Okay, I'm going to show you a little bit of how this applies to the bow on the string. What you're looking for, nice smooth bow strokes with the tip supported so you're parallel to the floor. Flexibility in these fingers. If you're playing fast, you see how that motion comes from in the fingers. If you're playing smooth, flexibility in the fingers acts as a shock absorber to de-emphasize the bow changes if you're looking for smooth legato strokes. The weight of the bow really comes from the thumb. So when I was off the string, I'm showing you how the index finger and the second finger support the tip of the bow, and this is true. But when you put the bow on the string, the friction of the rosin against the string really does a lot to support the bow for you. So you can actually play without these fingers even involved. It's a little bit tricky. You have to concentrate to do that because you lose control of the bow if all you got on there is your thumb. But the thumb coming on top of the stick like this with your arm relaxed is going to hold the bow on the string. So here's the problem that a lot of kids have, is they'll think that to put the bow in, to put weight into the string, they have to get these two fingers and squeeze down and push into the string, and then you've lost all of your flexibility. If you bring the thumb over on top of the stick, then you really don't need any squeezing from your index finger and your second finger. These fingers are just controlling the bow with the weight coming in through your thumb. So I hope that makes sense. And explaining this aspect to kids really helps them get this relaxed and goes a long way towards solving this problem. The other thing you see a lot, and I'm going to call your attention to my elbow. Probably familiar with the chicken wing. Again, there's a couple of things that this comes from. Reminding kids to relax their elbow, that the bow stroke comes from the shoulder, not from the elbow, so you're swinging the shoulder like a pendulum. The elbow stays relaxed, and now your fingers can stay curved. When the elbow starts to bend, fingers straighten out. Not only do you lose a good perpendicular point of contact, so your sound, of course, suffers, but your fingers straighten out and you lose all of your flexibility. So this causes a problem not only in terms of what happens to the angle of the bow, but when you tell someone straighten out your elbow, a lot of times they come back like this instead of like that. So the chicken wing straightens out the fingers, and even when kids fix it, they'll come back with a bow hold like this where they don't have their flexibility. You want to remind them curving their index finger. Now I teach in a string orchestra class, And you've got a couple of German bow players back there that are always doing something a little different than everyone else who's playing a French-style bow. So I explained to the German bow players that when I talk to the violins about their curved pinky, that what I'm really talking about is your index finger. So every time you hear me say to the violins or violas, remember, curve and tap your pinky, what I'm really saying to the bass players is curve and tap your index finger. Okay, so just to wrap things up a little bit, one more time from the wide shot, just to show you the German bow hold, the way the bow stroke comes from the shoulder. You want to keep the elbow relaxed. Fingers flexible here so that you can have either fast playing or smooth legato playing. One more word about getting weight into the string. I know when we were close up, I talked about how students will frequently squeeze down with their index finger so they can grab and push into the string. Thumb on top of the string, arm relaxed. Now, if you're seated and playing, or if you're standing and playing in thumb position, if you've looked at my videos on holding the instrument standing, if you go up into the thumb position and you're standing, you bring the bass back over your shoulder. Or if you're seated to play, your bass is back over your shoulder anyway. Getting the weight into the string really comes from a relaxing of the arm. So if I just let my arm hang here on the bow through my thumb, if I were to let go with my thumb here, my arm just flops down against my side, completely relaxed, or at least as relaxed as I can possibly get it. The leverage between the tip of my thumb and the webbing between my thumb and the index finger, that's where the weight comes in, right? So I've got my arm relaxed, hanging off of the thumb, leverage between the thumb and the webbing of the index finger gets me the weight into the string. And this is one of the advantages of the German bow over the French bow. And French bow has its advantages as well, but this is one of the great things that the German bow has, is as you get out to the tip, it's much easier to transfer your weight out into the tip of a German bow than it is to the French bow, because you have this system of leverage. You can get that thumb down and a little bit of twist of your wrist, and you can really get some serious weight. I don't know if you can kind of see how hard I have to try to lift the bow. I can get serious weight down to the tip like that, so it makes it very easy to maintain a strong forte all the way through the entire length of the bow. That's certainly possible on a French bow, but it's a little bit more difficult. That's one of the advantages of the German bow. But always having your arm relaxed. Now, if you're standing and in the lower positions, again, you may want to go back to my video about holding the bass while standing. I think it's part 2 of that, is using the bow. You know, lean the instrument a little bit forward. You want to establish equilibrium between the bass leaning forward, your relaxed arm and the leverage from your thumb and your webbing between the thumb and the index finger. And that's where you get the weight in the string. If you're playing standing, leaning the bass forward a little bit, relaxing your arm, leverage between the tip of the thumb and the webbing between the thumb and the index finger. Now, if you watch great German bow players play, and I'll just mention this quickly, although I'm not going to go into it, you will see quite a lot of variation in the placement of the thumb. But the thing that you always get is that it's wrapped around the top of the stick. I like to have my thumb right here. I think it gives me, good flexibility right in here. But I've seen players just play fantastically with their thumb wrapped all the way over around here. Now, personally, I can't do that to save my life, but I've seen players do it to great effect. So when I'm working with a student, I'll be generally accepting of a range of thumb positions. Whatever ends up comfortable for their hand, I let them go with it, as long as they can stay flexible in their fingers, keep their bow parallel to the floor, supporting underneath when they need to. All right, so I hope this has been useful for you. If you found this helpful, please remember to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.